Some bonds give more returns, get more security and more interest on your fixed deposits from Sri Lanka's largest finance company, LOLC Finance.
May not be keepers. Do right. Do the right thing even when no one is looking. Refresh Sri Lanka for a civic-minded society in association with AICPA and CIMA, CA, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, and 99X, LMD, the voice of business.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging media.
You're mobile, and so are we.
Gets me going.
Grab the Lite 87 app at the Apple App Store or Google Play now.
87.8 and 87.6 island-wide. Lite 87.
Hello and welcome to LMDtv. Tonight on the forum, we're going live with Booker Prize winner Shehan Karunatilaka to reflect on what his achievement means to him and to Sri Lanka. Welcome to the show, Shehan.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Starting things off, can you take us through your experience around the Booker Prize and what your journey entailed in terms of submission and subsequent steps?
Well, I guess I've always been conscious of the Booker Prize ever since Romesh Gunasekara was shortlisted early in the early 90s and Michael Ondaatje won. And I mean, I remember it was like see the name Gunasekara, a Sri Lankan name up there with the best. And I suppose I followed it. I mean, you develop your own reading taste, but I did always follow. And I remember seeing Arundhati Roy. She came to the British Council and she spoke after her win. And I guess like with everyone, when the Booker long list comes out, suddenly there's this kind of selection of these wonderful books that you never heard of that you'd read. So I had, as a reader, I had a relationship with the Booker. But of course, when you're writing, you don't think about winning Bookers. You don't think of winning prizes. You just hope that this story works and you can finish it and that someone will be silly enough to publish it. And so I wasn't thinking of any of that and it was a long process writing Seven Moons. So I don't know how the submission process, I think it helped that I was with a smaller publisher. I think with the bigger publishers, there's a lot of competition for submitting for the Booker or these prestigious prizes. But because I was with Sort of Books, Natanya Jans and Mark Ellingham, it's pretty much the two of them. And so they were able to submit it. But yeah, you finish the book, you send it out in the world and you hope that someone will like it. And then suddenly you get this call saying it was longlisted for the Booker. And then I've just been hanging on every step of the ride, got shortlisted. And then, over a month ago it won. And the ride's been crazy since. But this is not something you anticipate, but you're grateful for it when it happens.
And now that it has happened, how do you think it's going to influence your work in future? And has the magnitude of the prize really sunk in yet?
Has it sunk in? I mean, it's sinking every day. I mean, I'm sinking every day under because you got to understand, writers, where usually, I mean, this room you see around me, luckily it's blurred, but it's quite a messy room full of books. And I sit in here most of the last few years, not talking to many people. And now since the Booker, I have a lot of inboxes and emails to clear, and there's a lot of attention to the book. And, like I say, you got to be grateful for it. how it's going to impact, it's not going to make the next book any easier to write. That's one thing I learned. Chinaman, the first book, it did better than expected. It won some awards, but it didn't make the second book any easier. And I think with all that, you kind of have to turn off the noise and get back into whatever the next. And I've started the third book already, and it's going to take a while. And so I don't think in those terms it really changes. But of course, it does change the fact that, now this book is going to be read quite widely across different markets. And people are going to now be expecting a lot of the next book. And so I got to make sure it doesn't suck. But aside from that, I think it's still this. I'm still going to sit in this room and still be typing all day and not talking to people. So let's see.
And getting into the writing process per se, what prompts your storytelling and what is your process for transcribing an idea into a full-length novel?
So I think the idea part of it is really the easy part. Like, in the sense, everyone has ideas, and my background is working in advertising, where you're sort of expected to come up with ideas on a weekly, sometimes daily basis. So we've got, like I say in my bio, that I live with a wife and 2 kids and 27 unfinished stories. And I'm not being facetious. That is true. I've got ideas that I've jotted down, but after the idea, it's actually making it work, sitting down and writing 200 pages or more about it. And that's the tough bit. I have a couple of ideas that I've selected. I'm writing a kid's book about insects. I'm writing a third novel, which nothing to do with cricket or ghosts, something completely different. And I think the process is the same that I learned in advertising. It's, there's fancy new names for it, but roughly you spend time researching, then you spend time incubating, then you brainstorm, and then you edit. And that seems to be the case with whether I'm writing a short ad or an article or a novel that takes 7 years. So I expect I'm going to spend the next year or so researching and coming up with ideas. And then, who knows? Hopefully I'll be quicker than before. But it's no real... this is nothing really original. You've heard about everyone's creative process. You have to go through it, and you have to be patient with it. So with me, I'm gonna spend the next year in research, and then write a draft. I think if you write every day, even for an hour or two, within a year you'll have a draft. So hopefully by this time next year I'll have a draft. I'm pretty certain it'll be terrible. That's been my experience with your first draft's always terrible, but then you redo it until it's okay and someone's willing to publish it. So I don't think that process is going to change. It's not that magical. I'm sorry if I demystified. It's just a lot of hard work and patience, but that's how it's done.
And in terms of inspiration, were you inspired by any previous recipients of the Booker Prize? And if so, how did they shape your journey as the writer?
Yeah, so many. You got to start at the beginning with the Booker Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children, and I think a whole generation of writers from the subcontinent. It told us that we could write in a voice that, in the voice of what we heard around us on the streets, how South Asians spoke. And it's strange because Salman Rushdie doesn't speak like his books. He's a very posh Englishman, and but yet, through Midnight's Children and his subsequent books, he gave us that permission. And I got that as well from Carl Muller, who didn't win a Booker Prize or was nominated, but was equally influential in my life, where he wrote how Sri Lankans spoke. So I think that was the first influence. And I've been all the South Asian winners, Arundhati Roy, who I mentioned, Arvind Adiga, Kiran Desai, and Anup Arupragasam, I read all and Mohsin Hamid, I can go on. So you get inspired that someone from your part of the world can compete on this stage. But I think aside from that, with my sensibility, David Mitchell, I remember reading Cloud Atlas. So that's the thing with the Booker Prize. You don't have to read the winner. You can, sometimes there are better books in the short list and in the long list. So you choose what appeals to you. So Margaret Atwood, David Mitchell, George Saunders. So Cloud Atlas, I remember reading it in the short list and being quite upset when it didn't win. Margaret Atwood, Blind Assassin isn't my favorite of hers, but she's got many in my opinion, better books. So I think the book just introduces you to authors that kind of vibe with whatever your taste is. And certainly George Saunders, where quite recently, Lincoln in the Bardo, it was another talking ghost book. And I remember when it came out, I was struggling with what was then called Chats with the Dead. And I thought, I was quite annoyed that, because I thought there's no chance they're going to award another talking ghost book. But I read Lincoln in the Bardo, it's a masterpiece. And I think that's the thing about the book, you get inspired by these things and hopefully it informs your work. And if nothing else, it proved that there is room for more than one talking ghost book to win the Booker. So that was great. But yeah, the Booker is a constant form of inspiration, but it's not the only one. I mean, there's plenty of prizes and there's plenty of great books that don't win prizes. So yeah.
And you spoke of reading, looking at things from a new writer's perspective or budding writers. How should they approach great works of literature other than from the standpoint of a reader?
So I think you should start from the standpoint of the reader. You should become a reader before you become a writer. So you should read, I would say, read what you enjoy. Not just, I mean, the classics are there for a reason, but it shouldn't feel like work. You should read the stuff that you enjoy, whether, it's thrillers, romance, mysteries, whatever, nonfiction. So I think that's the main thing. But I also have this, you eat your veggies and you have your ice cream, that kind of reward system. So you're reading ice cream, but you add a classic to it. And so that's what I do every year. So, over the recent years, I've read Dickens and Austen and Dostoevsky, and I haven't got to Tolstoy yet, so I ration it that way because there's a lot to be learned from it. But I would say read like a reader, and then you find out the things that you enjoy. And that's really, you find out your taste, and maybe you read like a writer on your rereading. So for instance, the example I keep coming to is Kurt Vonnegut, whose Slaughterhouse-Five is among the classics. It's not as challenging as James Joyce or Dostoevsky, but for me, it really spoke to me. So then on rereading it, then you deconstruct it. And I guess it's like watching a film. You watch it for the second, third time, you can suddenly see how all the lighting, the directing, and all that worked. But when you're watching it the first time, you're experiencing it like a reader. So I would just say, don't force yourself to read the classics exclusively. Balance it out with things. Reading should be a pleasurable, enjoyable activity. And that's the main thing. But do challenge yourself. Do read stuff that's not aimed at your demographic or at your generation, and I think you'll find value in it. Especially if everyone else is just reading whatever's cool at the moment. If you go back to the classics, which have stood the test of time for a reason, I think you're going to be a better writer. But like I say, balance your veggies with your ice cream. Enjoy it. Yeah.
And if we get into the writing part of it, in your opinion, do you think good writing is an organic skill or a trained skill? And is it durable or perishable?
Durable or perishable? I mean, our minds are perishable. That's the thing. And so we have to take care of those. But I guess the first question is, I thought a lot about talent when I was researching the first book, Chinaman, The Legend of Pradeep Matthew, was but a very talented guy who didn't quite make it for whatever reason. And I think talent exists. There, some kids can run faster than others, some can write, some can sing. That exists, but I think talent only takes you so far. Really, it's if you want to reach, if you want to thrill a reader, if you want to be read outside of your region or country, talent's not, you need to put in the work. So I think with writing as well, I mean, I think maybe I had a little bit of talent when I was in school, when I studied English, but I think I was a terrible writer in my 20s. It really, I took time to read the things that I wanted to aspire to, but also there's all the advice now. You have your YouTubes and your master classes, and there's plenty of writing advice. You don't need to really go to an expensive MFA program to say that you can write. The resources are there. But yeah, so I spent a lot of time also in my 20s and 30s before writing Chinaman, geeking out on tips on writing. And there's plenty of those things. There are techniques on how to draw in a reader, how to surprise them, how to work subtext, and all these things are there. So I think it is a learned craft. I really do. I think we have this idea of the writer as a genius who just kind of wakes up and just types out a symphony and then drinks lots of wine and goes to sleep and dies tragically. I think the stereotype is quite dated because most of the writers I know are kind of hardworking, jobbing people who keep themselves healthy and just read a lot and just work on their craft. So it is a trainable skill. Whether it's durable or perishable, I think you do get better with age. Unlike with, if you're a sports person, you have a very definite timeline. So hopefully I'm approaching my peak, but my father's got dementia. He's still with us, but these things are coming for you. So I've been so I think the main thing is, keep your mind and your body and your soul healthy and so you can keep writing those books because the brain is perishable. So you got to take care of that because stuff like dementia, Alzheimer's, once that starts happening, it's the worst thing for a novelist where you have to keep like multiple plot lines in your head and things like that. So it's a learnable skill, it's a teachable skill, it's a trainable skill. So I think anyone who's is patient enough should try it and should do it.
And in your opinion, how significant is exposure to a writer, be it regarding travel or education or local experiences?
Well, those are the things. But in the sense, so travel, that's one thing, certainly. I mean, I believe when I was in my 20s writing bad novels and playing in bad bands and all that, I thought, okay, what do I need to do? I need to read more. I need to listen more. I need to travel more. And travel's quite expensive these days. It was a lot cheaper when I was young. It wasn't that cheap even then. But look, we're blessed to live in Sri Lanka. You don't need to fly to Peru or the Bahamas or Moscow. You can experience a lot of history and a lot of landscape just traveling through our country. So I think, certainly travel. And if you're fortunate to be able to explore the region and just interact with different people, I think certainly that is one thing. But I think the main travel you do is in books. And this is why I chose to write as not to be a filmmaker, not that I had talent in either, or a musician, but with all those crafts, you want to make a film, you need great cameras, you need a proper director, lighting, actors, a lot of factors, and a lot of money as well. Same with music, you need producers, drummers, singers, and all this stuff. But with writing, I just feel I'm literally on the same page as someone sitting in New York or Paris or London or Tokyo or wherever. We've still got pencils and papers. I mean, paper's getting more expensive, so are pencils. But for now, we still have those tools. We've got the internet. We've got things to type on, and really, that's all you need if you're writing books and an imagination and access to books, which we have, thankfully, for now, and I hope for forever. And I hope more people have access to books. So I think, with writing books, there's no real excuse. It's just how much time you put into it. I mean, Jane Austen didn't have access to the internet, and she didn't exposure. She didn't go and travel to Bali to find herself before she wrote. She was living in a pretty boring village, but observing the characters in a village and reading quite widely from her library. And she's written books that we're still talking about today, which have eclipsed the stuff in her day. So I think with writing, you can talk about getting a degree or getting, traveling more and doing all that. But I think really all the tools you need are with you: a pen, a pencil, a paper, an imagination, and patience.
Shehan, I'm going to quote you from an article I read where you have described yourself as a failed cricketer, failed rock star, and a failed vegan. How impactful were your failures in shaping your successes?
Well, this is I think I quote from the famous Michael Jordan ad, Nike ad, where he's walking to a game and he's talking about how many times he's failed and missed the match-winning shot and this and that. And I think the punchline is, I failed over and over and over again, and that is why I succeed. And then Nike logo. And this is, I think I quoted in Chinaman as well. And so the idea for me, and this is all true, I wasn't just trying to be smart about it. I was a failed cricketer. I was a left-arm leg spin bowler, left-arm Chinaman bowler, and I'd always be first picked for the team, but by the middle of the season, I was on the reserve bench because I was just lazy. I had never practiced fielding, never practiced my batting. I just thought I could just turn up and bowl and get wickets. And so I think from that, you learn that just having talent is, whereas the guy who was bowling medium pace, right arm medium pace, but who turned up to practice and worked, ended up in the team ahead of me. So I think that was the lesson from my cricketing career. And same with music as well. I didn't, I grew the hair, I still have the hair, and I kind of, had the guitars, but I didn't practice every day. Which is what you need if you want to be a musician. And I think with writing, this is not something I consciously did, but I did. While I was trying to be a cricketer, while I was trying to be a musician, I was still reading and writing every day, even if I was just writing in diaries. And so I think maybe from those failures, when I finally decided I want to write a full-length book, I realized, okay, you can't just be amateur about it. You can't just type whenever you feel like. You've got to dedicate time to it and research it and do it properly. And so I think you learn from those failures. Being a failed vegan, I mean, this is a failure I still go through. Let's see. And now I can be off meat a few times a week. So I think with that one, that I can kind of learn from. But I think the chance of me becoming a cricketer or a rock star probably gone. But so short answer to your question is, you should learn from your failures. And this is what I think separates proper writers from civilians. Civilians try to write, it turns out really bad, and they're like, this is not for me, and they move on. Writers, it turns out bad. I mean, my next draft is going to be bad, but then we think, okay, maybe I can keep working on this and make it better. So I think writers continuously fail. A manuscript is terrible right until the point where it's okay and it's ready. Up till then, it's terrible. So you have to kind of, plow through the mud to get there. So failure, embrace your failure. It's not a bad thing.
Any tips that you can offer to budding writers on how to pick themselves up from the ashes?
Well, tips are, you have to, because there's plenty of tips around there. You just have to have faith that the thing is worth doing. And that's why you pick an idea that no one wanted a book about a left-arm spinner who played for Sri Lanka in '85, but I wanted it. I thought someone should write that story. And for many years, I expected someone to write it, and I realized no one's going to write this story. And so I did it. And while I was doing it, people said, well, it's interesting, but I don't think anyone's, you're not going to get any prizes for this. And I don't think, this has any value. But you have faith in it. So I think that's the first thing. You have faith in the project that if you do it properly, it would be readable. And you just have to expect the failures. I saw a clip with Martin Scorsese saying that he still gets physically ill every time he sees his first cut of his film. And this is a man who's done classics and continues to do so. But that was telling to me, because I feel not physically sick, but every time I put a story away and I read it again, I just think, what am I doing? And I think when you're younger, that tends to demoralize you. But if you do realize that with each time you pick it up and you revise it, it gets better. If you know that, and I think that's the secret to good writing, is that you just keep revising something and it keeps getting better. So I think that's all. I mean, again, it's not original or profound advice, but you have to believe in the story you're telling and believe that it will get better, and be patient. You may want to hammer out a novel in 6 months, but it took me 6 years and may take longer. So you have to, as long as it takes. Shehan,
moving on to a different angle. LMD recently launched our campaign, Refresh Sri Lanka, where we encourage a mindset change in society for a more civic-minded nation. As a Booker Prize winner and a Sri Lankan who shone a light on Sri Lanka from the world stage, what would be your focus areas to inspire society to care for the well-being of others?
Well, I mean, I think it's a really great project, and looking after each other is, it's present. We claim to be religious and we claim to be a Buddhist society, all of that. These are all ideas that have been around for 2,000 years, compassion, empathy, the fact that the ego is false. I mean, this is not just a Buddhist idea. It's in Hinduism. It's in all philosophies that you are not separate from humanity and other people's suffering is your suffering and you should ease it. I think these ideas have they've been around, and we just don't choose to listen to them. But the fact that we've been through this year, 2022, we've been at the brink of absolute anarchy. And we're nowhere near safe anymore. And the thing is, there are a lot of Sri Lankans who are suffering. There are a lot of Sri Lankans who are doing okay and can be glad they survived this year, but there are a lot of Sri Lankans who are suffering. So I think this is a great thing to promote the idea that, and not wait for a government or institution to do it, but just citizens, because that's what, if anything, I mean, I know these movements are getting demonized now, but I was there during the Aragal, and what really moved me was the fact that there were Sri Lankans all united, looking out for each other. And so we are capable of doing that. So I think it's a great thing to promote. And this time of year, and it doesn't have to be on a big scale. It's whatever you can do, but just helping the people around you, helping the people that you know who are struggling. And if you were fortunate, sharing that fortune with others. And I think these are all values that we should have in society. We shouldn't need to remind people. But I mean, let's see. I'm hopeful that we do the right thing. And the scenes that I saw during the struggle gave me hope.
We are almost at the end of the show. Shehan, any closing thoughts to share with our viewers?
I've been giving thoughts all month, man. I usually write down my thoughts and revise them. But I mean, I guess I can just build on stuff that I said during my speech. I badly tried to speak Tamil, and the idea that we should share our stories, listen to each other's stories, and not because Sri Lanka is many narratives. There's just our recent history. 2022, I'm sure there's many narratives. My lifetime, the last 40 years, which I was writing about in the two books, going back 200, 2,000 years, there's many narratives. And I think the idea is you should listen to as many narratives, many points of view as possible. And if you feel that none of them are telling the truth, you should write your own point of view. You should share your story, read others. So I guess my hope, and this is something I've said many times, that we have our literature, we have Sinhala, Tamil, and English Sri Lankan writing, that we have more of it in translation, so that people who read in English can read the great works in Sinhala and Tamil, and vice versa. It can be translated throughout, so that we have national literature, but more than just national literature. I don't know if these things are important, but what is important is that we all listen to each other's stories and we all learn from each other. And I think this idea of empathy and compassion and concern for each other will come that way when we don't just accept the single narrative that's handed down from governments, from schools, from media, social media, whatever, that we are able to form our own opinions. So I guess my hope would be that if anything from this victory, that more Sri Lankans write and more Sri Lankans read and listen to each other and learn from our past.
Thank you. Thank you, Shehan. It's been an immense pleasure talking to you tonight.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Thanks.
And to our viewers, until next time, good night.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for watching and stay safe.